attending our we are glad to present to you this personal statement workshop that the SNMA at Johns Hopkins Medicine has been working on. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to you guys to do introductions and begin the event. And thank you so much to taking time out of your day to coming here. We know it's like an extra commitment and you guys are so busy and we are super grateful.
Awesome. So thanks so much for that. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen really quickly so you can see the outline. All right, so everyone, thanks so much for coming to this workshop. It's great to see such a wonderful turnout. My name is Avery. I'm one of the MAPS liaisons along with Malcolm. And so we have a lot planned for the next hour, so I'm just gonna roll right into it. So we're very, very, very lucky to have Dean White here with us. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to share your wisdom. So we're going to go ahead and get started with some remarks from Dean White. Then we'll leave it open for time for you guys to ask him some questions. And during that session, you can feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question or put it in the chat if you don't want to do that. After that, we're going to move into breakout rooms with our medical students. So we have about 5 lovely medical student volunteers who are going to work with you. So we'll go into the breakout rooms for about 25 minutes, and then we'll return back to the main room for some closing remarks. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to Dean White.
Great. Avery, do you mind if I actually have a PowerPoint just so I can make sure I hit on some topics? So do you mind if I share my screen?
Go ahead. I made you co-host.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
No problem.
Let's see if I can find the thing. Give me 1 second. I don't see it. Now I see it. Okay, can everyone see my screen? You're on mute, so.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, great. Let me go back up and I'll try to make it larger. Let's see. Oh, this happened to Tara Jones Sims the other day. It doesn't want you to enlarge it. Let me get that out of there. So, well, hopefully you'll still be able to see it. I thought I would, since I don't know what year some of these students are, but if you're not applying this coming cycle, or you haven't already applied, let's put it that way, yeah, you probably don't know about the AMCAS guidelines for the personal statement. So I thought I would put those up first. And I actually agree with what they have written here. Use the personal statement as an opportunity to distinguish yourself from other applicants. And sometimes students think, well, how can I do that? Well, use your own voice, and I'll talk more about your own voice, and that's how you do it, okay? Some of the questions you may want to consider in addressing in your personal statement, why you've selected the field of medicine. What brought you to this point? What motivates you to learn more about medicine? Obviously, if you want to be a doctor, you have to go to medical school, but you need to talk about what your motivation is, okay? And what do you want medical schools to know more about you that hasn't been disclosed in other sections of the application? And that's actually a very important. We're going to hear from your faculty. We're going to see your activities. And at some point, we'll see your supplemental, your secondary application. But the personal statement goes to every medical school that you applied to. One of the things I didn't put in my suggestions, but I will say it now, is do not be specific about the medical school, because this goes to all of us, right? And you don't want to be embarrassed and talk about why you've always wanted to be at Hopkins, and this is going to schools in Boston and Palo Alto and so forth, Philadelphia, okay? So, but what you should do is, there may be some reasons why you feel you need to be a doctor, and we need to be able to figure that out from your personal statement. So this is your opportunity to tell us about that. me see if this will let me advance to the next page. Nope. Let's do this. In addition, you may want to include such information as any unique hardships you've faced. You know, one of the things we talk about in admissions, I've been doing admissions for many, many years, going back to the late 70s, and I've been doing medical school admissions since 2000. And one of my great colleagues at Stanford at the time was Gabe Garcia, Dr. Garcia. And Dr. Garcia used to talk about the distance traveled. We're very much interested in the distance that you've had to overcome to get to this point. And that may also explain some obstacles or challenges that you've encountered in your life, and yet you've overcome them. We want to hear about that. AMCAS is, you can comment on significant fluctuations in your academic record that are not explained elsewhere in your application. Here's where I differ a little. Make sure you're sure that they're not addressed in other parts of your application. The reason why I say that is, what does that have to do with why you want to be a doctor? Right? And it's also something that might be your opportunity to address in your secondary application. There are secondary applications or supplemental applications are sent to students whose AMCAS application has been verified. And the secondary has institutional specific short essay answers. And so I don't always want to see the same thing in your personal statement that I'm going to read in your short essays, okay? But again, if you think, you know, there is something that needs to be addressed about your academic record and you're not sure, although I'd be surprised that your advisor or your letter of recommendation writers haven't explained it, then yeah, you can touch upon it, but don't dwell on it. That's what I say. Other recommendations that I would make, it's important to have clinical experience. I think it is, since we want to know why you find medicine is for you, and that can inform what you write in your personal statement. You're coming from your own experiences encountering medicine, and which is what I say, write from your experiences, not what others think or what you've heard. Avoid overuse of the I syndrome. Some of this is common sense, but it's worth saying, you know, when you have X number of characters to write a personal statement, and I've actually had members of the screening committee, and I'm one of them. I mean, I'm a screener too, but I don't do this, but some will say, I counted 30 I's in her personal statement. Every sentence started, I did this, I want this, I think this, I believe that. That's not good. So stay away from that, okay? And then this is something that you have to be careful and temper how you do it, but never criticize the medical field in your personal statement. I've seen people say, well, my mother didn't get adequate care from her physician, or the doctors botched my father's surgery and so forth, and I think I can do a better job. Keep in mind, for the most part, who's reading this, these are doctors. And even though they try to separate their own feelings, they're human. And I've seen doctors get really annoyed when a student has written a critical personal statement, or written it in such a way that, well, I think I can do better. That you don't want to come across like that in your statement, okay? So, I mean, these are all pretty straightforward. And again, write in your own voice. Oops, let me go to one more slide. Be yourself in your personal statement. We want to hear your voice. What interests you? What's your passion? What's brought you here? As I say, don't be shy. You know, if there are certain things that you're pretty proud that you've done or learned or helped others, particularly as it relates to medicine, volunteerism, so tell us about it. We want to hear about it. If you heard me say earlier, if there's certain obstacles you've had to overcome and you've done it, tell us about that. Otherwise, how do we know what impact these things had on you and your development? Because again, we want to know the distance you've traveled. And that's the whole point of the personal statement. Make sure your introduction and your conclusions are well written. I literally am one of these people who will read the first paragraph and I'm like, oh, I don't get it. And I may stop reading, I'll be honest with you. And I've read over 2,000 applications personally. So, and I've been doing this since, well, again, medical school for 21 years. And I've read a lot of applications over the year. Just write carefully, thoughtfully, like you would for a term paper. Okay. And then review what you've written. Don't make mistakes in grammar. Do not make mistakes in punctuation. It looks sloppy and definitely comes up in discussion when we are reviewing a candidate and discussing their application. That's why I say show it to someone you trust, get their feedback. There's nothing wrong with constructive criticism. And then rewrite it again if necessary. What does that mean? Then plan and leave plenty of time to write your personal statement. Don't wait until the last minute and rush it. If it's something you're struggling with, talk to people first. Get some ideas about what they think might be something they should tell the medical schools. Because here's the thing, sometimes we don't always see ourselves the way others see us. And you might be inspired by things you hear from your friends or relatives in some cases, but definitely share with people. Don't feel that you have to write the personal statement that is going to be, published. You're the next Toni Morrison or the next Colson Whitehead or James Baldwin, whoever's names you want to throw out there, okay? Amy Tan, whatever. But what you want to do though is say, this is who I am. This is why I'm drawn to medicine and why I think your institution should give me a look. Keep in mind, we're looking at you to see who gets an interview. This is even before the interview stage. Now, once you get an interview, everybody on the committee gets to see this. And we may not all have the same opinion. I'm not a doctor. What do I care about? Getting the best students, but I also want to make sure, as someone who majored in history and literature, this is a person who writes well. Well, why is that important? Because you have to write well in medical school. You have to write well when you're doing your rotations, okay? So that's not a whole lot that I gave you, but that's hopefully going to be helpful to you. I really want to hear your questions though. So who's moderating? Is it Kelly or Avery?
I guess if you guys feel comfortable, you could go ahead and unmute yourself just to make it more personal. But if you'd like, you can put it in the chat and I can read your question.
Oh, that's good. That's sure, Avery. Yeah.
Whatever works best.
I have a question. So what is the difference between a personal statement and a statement of purpose?
Well, it's interesting. We don't ask for a statement of purpose. So that's not an area. Did you see what I'm saying? I mean, the AMCAS application asks for, you all know about AMCAS. It's a standardized application that goes to every medical school to which you hope to apply. It's almost like the common application if you used it for college. Think of it as a common application. The personal statement has to be written in such a way that it is, it can certainly talk about your vision and so forth in terms of what you want to do as a physician. But again, it has to be what brought you to this point. That's the whole focus. It should be a lot of the focus of the personal statement. I mean, some of you M1s might have a different perspective, but I'm just telling you that that's how we see it. And do you want me to stop sharing this, by the way? I can do that. Okay, all right. So, but I like the idea of writing a statement of purpose, but I don't, like I said, we don't require such a thing for Hopkins anyway. Oops, and I see, Avery, there are a couple things in the chat.
Great, so we have a question in the chat. Should students rewrite their resume in the personal statement?
No, no. You mean, should they restate their resume? Absolutely not. We're gonna see that. You get 15 categories you can list on the AMCAS application, and you can indicate 3 of those which are most meaningful. That's where you tell us about your activities, be they clinical experiences, volunteer or paid, be they community service, non-medical, leadership positions. We're going to see all that. The personal statement should not be regurgitation of your activities. I mean, it's, being a member of something doesn't tell me who you are necessarily. It tells me you're active, right? I want to know who you are. I want to know why you want to be a doctor. I want to know what you have experienced personal that's brought you to this point. That's why it's called personal statement.
What about if there are like experiences on your resume, but like could you include them in the personal statement, like as they relate to your motivation to pursue medicine? Like, for example, volunteering at a hospital and like experiences you've had.
Oh, sure. No, that's fine. Yeah, that's not, maybe I'm not saying it correctly, but that's fine, because that's what I said, get some clinical exposure. And then you may have encountered someone in your experience as a volunteer in a hospital or clinic, and you realize your whole concept of what it means to be a doctor may have been wrong, or you learned a lot more empathy because of your position in a hospital as a volunteer. Do you see what I'm saying? So no, that's perfectly fine. What I'm saying is, don't tell us I did this, I did this, I did this. It's a list of all the things you've done. That's not going to impress anyone, but what you got out of it is certainly helpful. Is there another one?
Oh yeah, I have a question. Thank you for coming to our meeting first off.
Oh,
But
my pleasure.
So I know AMCAS has a limit of 5,300 characters for the personal statement. So how important is length? Like, do you recommend that people use all the characters they can, or like a sweet spot sort of thing?
May I call you Tempest?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah.
Oh, wait, why don't you guys tell me where you're from? Where's home for you?
Oh, I'm from Metro Atlanta.
Metro Atlanta. Okay, all right. That's a good question. And the reason why it's a good question, and our current first years don't know that this happened 2 years ago. But 3 years ago, yeah, you guys would have applied 1920 cycle to come in 20, right? The first years. In the 1819 cycle, it was the first year we used AMCAS has something called Web Admit, and we used their secondary. And the person in IT creating it said, well, how many characters should we have? And I said, well, on the old application, which was through something called Apply Yourself, we said they could have like 2,000 characters, whatever. And she said, well, that doesn't sound like much. I said, well, people get tired of reading these, but when they go on and on and on. And she said, well, AMCAS allows you up to 9,990 on the secondary, something like that. I'm not talking about the personal statement. On each of the short answers, we were getting 3-page answers. So we saved the current first years, from having to do that, partly because people were writing us and saying, is this a mistake? Which it was, or do I have to fill the page because of the character count that it allows. And this is my roundabout way of saying, write as much as you need to convey what it is you want to do. I mean, you don't want to do a quarter of a page or half a page. That's bad, all right? That looks like, oh, you didn't spend a lot of time. I would say use, certainly 3,000 or 4,000 of those characters and see how long that gets you. Because when we see it, it's pretty compact. It's single space. But don't feel like I'm not sitting there counting how many characters you use. I can tell you that. That would be ridiculous, right? And I'm looking at the quality of your writing and what's behind your words, not the number of characters.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a few questions in the chat. Also, my name's Kelly and I'm from New York City.
Which borough?
So I was born and I lived like half my life in Queens, and now I live in Brooklyn. Like I moved to Brooklyn, so yeah.
Well, that's where all the cool people live, I understand. I have a niece and a grandniece. The niece is my brother's daughter and the grandniece is my nephew's daughter, and they both live in Brooklyn. And I'm like, well, but Lauren, you used to live in Manhattan and Harlem. Oh, Uncle Paul, you don't get it. All the cool people live in Brooklyn. So I feel like I'm really, anyway. I still like Harlem.
No, I think it's great too. I also really like it. So the first question is, should students address mental health challenges in the personal statement, and would that make a negative impression?
That's a good question. Kelly, not everyone can do it successfully. I'm not saying avoid it, but you have to be really careful about what you write. There's nothing wrong with that. Particularly, remember I said, if you've overcome something, then that's fine. It really is fine. I don't have a problem with that. Interesting enough, we have a section on in Avery and Earl and Alexa. We'll all remember this, and Tolu. We have a section on our secondary application that asks two things. One is, have you ever not been in the majority? Okay, and tell us about that. And then the other is, have you ever had to deal with adversity? And that's where, we invite you to talk about that.
Yeah.
The thing about the personal statement, if that was the inspiration, the motivation for your wanting to be a doctor, then okay. Do you see what I'm saying? But don't talk about, well, I didn't like my care, this is why I want to be. Do you see?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's all about like the way that you frame it.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
And then,
I don't think it should be avoided if that's something really meaningful to who you are and gives us insights as to who you are. That's what we're looking for, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then the next question is about the relevance of including race or sexual orientation in the personal statement.
Another good question, and it depends. I don't think it is going to hurt anyone to talk about either of those. I certainly see it in the applications, but I also see it. We invite people in our secondary application. Again, it's an optional question though, to address anything that hasn't been addressed in their AMCAS application or the secondary that gives us insight as to who they are. And that's often, and I invite people to talk about being first generation, being, any type of race or ethnicity, being their orientation, whatever they've overcome, because some people don't want to put that in the personal statement, and yet that's a part of who they are. And we started to, actually I wrote this about 4, maybe 5 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago. It's hard to remember anymore, but we started to ask that. And the reason why is because we didn't, if this is another facet to who you are and what you've dealt with in some cases, had to, with others, dealing with others, and you're still standing, we want to know of that, okay?
Thank you.
Mhm. These are good questions, by the way. You know, it's funny. I mean, I've been with Hopkins Med for 15 years, and I was in Minnesota for 6 years. And prior to that, I was the director of undergraduate admissions at a place called Johns Hopkins from 94 to 2000. Yeah, so.
I have a question more in regards to the process. So are you viewing our full AMCAS application when you're reading our personal statement, or do you read those
Absolutely.
all separately? Okay.
No, we get it as a PDF, okay? We download the entire application. And by the way, we don't pre-screen the application. So anyone who submits a verified AMCAS application gets our secondary, but we don't start reading the AMCAS application until all components of the application are there, which include the letters of recommendation, the transcript from AMCAS, and the Hopkins secondary.
Okay.
So, and you know, I literally read, well, I can read about 30 applications, sometimes more a day. Okay.
So I have another question in regards to that. So how many applications would like each admissions person be seeing? Like, is it around 30 for everyone?
No. Well, I asked them to do about 30 a week.
Okay.
And I mean, I will literally, I mean, sometimes I can only read about 15, 20, but keep in mind, I said I read 2,000 applications. I read 2,000 this year. And that's from second week or so, first week or so of August until the second week of February. That's how long it takes.
Okay. Thank you.
It is a long, drawn out process. I'm not going to say it's painful, but okay. Because, you know, it's important.
Yeah.
What you do is important, and we want to make sure we give you due diligence. So it's a very long process. And the way our process works, and we made some changes of all years this year with, you know, with the pandemic. We hadn't anticipated that, but we had planned to make some significant changes in the review process, which I won't go into great detail about. Suffice to say, you guys are read a lot, okay? At least twice, sometimes a third time, sometimes a fourth time. All right, so that's one reason why it's such a long process. Do all medical schools do it like that? Probably not, but you know, among our peers, yeah, it's fairly common to read at least twice, okay, and a third time. And you know, it's interesting. I mean, I don't mean to get off topic, but one of my good friends is Iris Gibbs. Some of you may know her. Dr. Gibbs is the associate dean at Stanford Med, and back when the pandemic hit, Stanford and some of the other California medical schools said, we're not going to use the MCAT as part of the review process. And so a lot of people wrote to my office saying, well, will you go the route, take the same route as Stanford and UCLA, you know, Geffen and UCSF and so forth, and drop the use of the MCAT. And I'm thinking, they're not dropping the MCAT requirement for the MCAT. So I called Iris, you know, I have her cell. I said, Iris, you're not dropping this, are you? No. Said, what we said was, we're not going to use it in the review process. You can be invited to interview, but they will not admit you until after they see your scores. That's different, okay? And the reason why I say that is, you know, this was an unusual year. We all most of us saw an increase in applications. Nationally, they went up 18%. Here at Hopkins, they increased 26%. And the only other of our peers, so to speak, that had more of an increase was Stanford. You want to know what their increase was? 50%. Because people thought they weren't requiring the MCAT. They were wrong. Don't make that kind of mistake, okay? I mean, I'm happy for Stanford, but whoa, that is huge. And I have a nephew, the one who lives in New York City, he's the head of admissions at NYU undergrad, not the med school. They broke 100,000 applications this year. I said, I'd hate to be you, I'm sorry. You know, 100,000 applications at the undergrad at NYU. Unbelievable.
Sorry.
Mhm.
I had another question in the
Sure.
chat that was about basically personal growth in your personal statement. Like, does it have to be dramatic, for lack of a better?
No, no. Thank you. No, 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 no. You know, not everything should be drama. You know, we get that, and don't make things up either. By the way, sometimes you know, it's interesting. I don't think students do it. I sometimes see it in letters of recommendation, and they'll write something that, oh, and this person did this. And I'm like, are you sure? And I don't know where they got it from, or sometimes they want to embellish, but there's no need to do that. I mean, we have so many checkpoints. I hate to say this, where we could check this and this and this, and they have to add up. And if they don't add up, we're not sure whom to believe.
Thank
Okay,
you.
but you know, that's why I say, you know, write in your own voice, and if you're not used to, you know, being dramatic, don't start now. You know, my former colleague on the committee used to say, not everyone has to be bombastic. You know, you can be low key, right? Seriously, doesn't hurt.
We probably have time for maybe one more question before we move on to the breakout room. So if anybody wants to have that honor.
I have a question. Hi, I'm Nicole. I'm from El Paso.
Where you from, Nicole?
El Paso, Texas.
Ah,
So
welcome.
since, nice to meet you. Since like the undergrads now are going through a pandemic, I was wondering if the med schools were more sympathetic to that in terms of experience that we need.
That's a good question, Nicole. Thank you for asking that, because I think we have to see what the profile of the students will look like in the next couple of years. You know, I'll be honest, we didn't change anything in our selection process this year for the class that'll be starting this August. Because every now and then I'd hear someone say, oh, they didn't have an opportunity to do this. And I'd remind them, pre-pandemic, look at pre-pandemic and not just pandemic, okay? And because things started opening up, even if someone said that, you know, they didn't have a chance to do anything clinically related, things did start to open up. I've seen students do some really interesting things. There, you know, some of you probably know about scribing, right? I'm giving a talk on Saturday to high school students, and I'm going to tell them to scribe. And then someone may say, oh, they can't do that. I went to see the ophthalmologist recently, and my doctor's talking to me, and he wasn't talking to me. He had a little thing in his ear. He was talking to his scribe. There's virtual scribing now. All right? Why not? You're still learning about something. In certain environments, like NIH has the postbac program, you're still able to participate in things like that. So, but we still, you know, it's still early, Nicole. I think it's going to be important, though, that we recognize this year in particular, meaning from summer, spring of 2020, right through now, we may not see quite the same type of profile. But who's to say what it'll look like in a year or two, okay? And so there will be a blip. I understand that, okay? But that's a good question. So I think we have to play it by ear for the most part. If you have no other questions, I will just tell you, sure.
Sorry. I actually had one last question.
Okay.
So I know how you talked about not criticizing the medical field, but I think like especially relevant to this particular audience, how do you feel about talking about inequities in healthcare, either in this country or another?
Oh, very good. No, that's different. Yes, there are. No, thank you. If I wasn't clear, I'm not saying there aren't health inequities. here in Baltimore, okay, but in this country in general. You can talk about those. What I'm talking about is the examples I gave are actually real. I've seen them where people have said, yes, exactly, yeah, my mother wasn't treated right. That's not, I mean, what do you bring to this, and how do you think, I mean, we know that there are health inequities. We teach healthcare disparities, right? The first years should know that, and you'll see some of that as you're going along, and more exposure to the curriculum. You'll learn more. We know that happens, and you can certainly talk about that. But what I'm talking about is it's almost coming at it as they're the enemy. Doctors have been the enemy because they're not sympathetic to your particular plight. So make it general, that's fine. That's a good question. What I was going to say is I'm actually doing something, I think, for Hopkins. Is Deirdre Campbell, I think she contacted me. I'm doing something in another week or two. Is that correct? There you are. Oh,
My apologies. Yes. Hi, everybody.
yes. So I will be back with the Hopkins students, right?
Yes,
And
absolutely.
is that the 30th?
That is the 24th, I believe.
Oh, I'm doing something for UCF, University of Central Florida MAPS, on the 30th, I think. And then we have summer information sessions, which are much more involved, and where I talk about what we're looking for. So those are already, the dates I believe are already posted on our website. And since they're virtual, I mean, we've tripled the number of people who are able to attend. So, and there are 4, so choose one. If you can't come to the Homewood program, although I encourage you to do that, but I will go over some of the same material in June and July, but I think, you guys will be a little further along, and I may, who knows, we'll see what, I mean, our committee has like a post-mortem, I hate to call it that, but at the end of every cycle, and this year's will be sometime in May, so we'll discuss what we might be doing differently in the coming year, and then I always try to relay that to the prospective applicants, okay? It's a pleasure meeting you all. Good luck to everyone. I know I'll see you again. And I hope you will definitely consider our medical school. Okay.
Thank you so
much for joining us,
Thank
Dean
you.
White.
It's my
Appreciate it.
pleasure, and thank you for inviting me.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and open up the breakout rooms.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. You guys should get an update so you can move into your breakout rooms. Do you guys see it?
Hi, everyone.
Hi. Hi, give me 1 second. I just want to make sure that we're supposed to be in the rooms yet. I probably should have checked before I clicked.
No worries. Okay, how is everyone today?
Thank you for asking my question because I was like high-key paranoid.
No, I messaged her. I was like, I have one more great question. But I think like that was such a good question. I feel like everyone would have asked that, I guess he wasn't supposed to be here yet. Oh.
Okay. How's everyone doing?
We're good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Do you want to go around and just introduce ourselves and then say like what year we are in undergrad?
Yeah, so I can start. My name is Kelly. I am a senior neuroscience major, originally from New York City. And yeah, I think that's all you needed to know. Yeah, you can go next.
Oh. I'm Nia. I am a senior majoring in molecular and cellular biology and psychology.
And then Trisha, do you want to go next?
Hey everybody, my name is Trisha. I'm majoring in neuroscience and public health, and I'm a senior. My home is in New Jersey.
Okay, and then Leah.
Hi, I'm Leah. I'm a freshman and I declared MOSAL last week, which is exciting, I guess. And I'm originally from Miami and I'm in Miami right now.
Merit, am I pronouncing it right? I feel like I'm not.
It's Marat. It's fine. I get all types of pronunciation. Hi,
I'm sorry.
I'm Marat.
Did you say how you pronounce it? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh. Oh.
I think you're muted. Okay, yeah, take your time, take your time. Do you want to go to Iyad? I apologize if I mispronounced that. Please correct me.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry, my camera's not on. I'm also in the middle of a class as well. But my name is Iyad. I also declared a public health major, minoring in psych, and I'm a freshman. Yeah.
Well, it's good to meet everyone. My name is Earl. I'm a first-year medical student. I am from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And so, yeah, I think that if I'm correct, the nature of this breakout room is just so you can ask me a little more like intimate questions, whatever you feel comfortable sharing, and whatever questions weren't answered in the larger session. You can also ask me questions that don't necessarily relate to the personal statement, but can also relate to just applications in general or anything else when it comes to medicine.
I have, oh, sorry, go.
Sorry, I was just gonna introduce myself real quick. Hi, I'm Marat. I am a sophomore and I'm majoring in molecular cellular biology and psychology. And yeah, sorry, had to do a quick room switch.
You're good. It's good to meet you. It's good to meet everyone.
My question was about basically like how you go about starting it. I guess I'm wondering, like, is a personal statement supposed to be more like creative writing-ish style, or like, because I just finished writing the HPCA, which like they told us to like not write it creatively, you know what I mean? They told us to just like write what you need to write. And so I was sort of like wondering how to go about writing the personal statement. Like, should I do like start with a narrative or like, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. It's a very good question. I think that it's, this is gonna sound horrible, but I think it's very like subjective and it's whatever like you think works best for you. Like I want to emphasize that personal statements are not meant to be like academic papers. These are really just like you recounting your own life story and maybe even just an aspect of your life story and like what kind of brought you into the field of medicine or wanting to go into medicine. As for me personally, like I think each person may or may not have like at least a general idea of why they may want to go into medicine. And so for me, it was like thinking about that idea again, thinking about this series of events, and then just kind of like I vomited everything out on the paper. And then from there, I like went through and I thought, okay, how can I make this into like a cohesive story?
That makes a lot of sense. And then follow up, like, did you, I guess, cause like there could be a lot of things that led you to medicine. So like, did you focus, like write a little bit about each thing, or did you focus on like one main, like motivation?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. So yeah, I think that, and like I said, there was a series of events that kind of led me to medicine. And so I think that to say that it was just one event per se would be like unfair in the sense of like the contributions that everything else has played in my life. And so what I ended up trying to do was I picked one main story and then framed everything else around that. And I also held like a different theme, like I held kind of like a theme to my entire application, like with the whole primary cycle, as well as even like my more individualized applications. And so I think it can require a lot of foreplanning as to what story do you want to specifically tell, especially if it happens to be like the reason that you want to go into medicine is galvanized by like a few different stories or a few different encounters, is trying to figure out which one is the most salient and like which one do you want to present foremost, but figuring out how you can incorporate everything else and at least represent everything else.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Hey, Earl. I have a question actually about your last point that you just made about having a theme to your application. So by that, do you mean like if I, for example, identify as like an educator and somebody who's really into teaching, that I should tie the like 15 activities on my AMCAS application to teaching somehow. Is that what you mean by that?
I got you. Okay. So yes and no. So I think with the AMCAS, they're going to give you 15 opportunities, right? And so you may have 15 opportunities that you can put down, 15 activities, experiences. You may not. You may have more. You may have less. I would try and get as holistic of a representation of you as possible. So that could be even. I think sometimes there's the fallacy that you have to have like 300 community service hours or like 300 shadowing hours, things like that. These are, I don't think that those are necessarily true. I think it should just be indicative of the fact that you're trying to be engaged with the community and that you understand that like patients come from the community and you are also part of a community. And so like by acting as a physician or even like as someone in healthcare, you're giving back to the community, which you too are a part of. And so it's just kind of getting this idea that like, you understand that being a physician is also being a person and trying to have as many different opportunities and like a breadth of experiences. Now, with that being said, so for example, one of my themes was like community service and recognizing that like physicians are people and people are often kind of pushed to the side and ostracized at times. And when it comes to access to healthcare, there's a whole bunch of other options, other, I guess, connections as well. But this idea that like community service was one of my themes. And so I would try and incorporate things that I thought were more community service related. So like if I had like multiple research opportunities in undergrad, but I chose only one that was really science to incorporate. And then the rest were like community service related. So it would be something with like School of Education, School of Urban Education, things like that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that makes sense. And like when you say that you did a lot of service activities, but you only highlighted one science, do you mean like in your personal statement or your AMCAS works and activities?
AMCAS.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, gotcha.
For the research.
Okay. Makes sense. Thanks.
Mhm.
I have a quick question, kind of similar to the others. So does it look bad or not bad, but like, would you recommend, so if you have some sort of theme to your application that specifically focuses on a specialty, do you think med schools or like admissions thing would like look down upon that? Like obviously you want to mention, like show that like you're passionate about like different things in medicine in general and that you have an open mind, but like would focusing on a specific specialty like be bad, I guess?
Okay, so I don't think that like, yeah, so I think that if you, let me see how I want to answer this. Say for example that you have conducted or you participated in research in like ortho, right? And then you've shadowed an orthopedic surgeon, you've only shadowed an orthopedic surgeon. Put those experiences down because those are things that medical admissions committees would like to see. But when they ask you, because they will likely ask you, even if you don't indicate something kind of as polarized as that, they will ask you at your interview, like, oh, do you have an idea of what field of medicine you want to go into? And I think that the best answer to that is 99 times out of 100, I do not know. I'm hoping to find my niche in medical school, although like currently I'm interested in, I guess in this situation, orthopedics, but I think that may just be due to the fact that most of my experiences, like clinical experiences, have been with orthopedic surgeons. This way you're not writing off other fields or other aspects of medicine because there are definitely niches in medicine, but you don't want to I don't think that you want to portray yourself as someone who's like, this is what I have to be. Because a lot of times you'll change. And I think there was a study done one year and it was like, I think it was even at Hopkins, and it was like 95% of people change whatever specialty they want to go into, like between the time that they first indicated like coming in, like early matriculation to when they match in the 4th year.
Got it, thank you.
If no one else has a question, I have another question. I had a question on, this is back to the personal statement. Basically, like, do you frame it as like you talk about your experiences as well as like talking about what you did in college that like continued your desire for medicine? like, did you include things from like activities that you did in college? Because I guess my question is like, when they read my meaningful essay, like, I don't want to like, I don't know.
Yeah,
Like,
no,
would they?
well, that's a good question. I think that yes, it's okay if they overlap. I don't think that the intention should be that they overlap. If it just is kind of like you realized all of a sudden because of some experience that you want to become a physician, and then to try and like get yourself on that path, you started shadowing more, something kind of like that. I think that's okay to incorporate, but I don't think that it should be like, because one of the things I think that was explicated earlier was that it shouldn't be like you restating your resume or your CV in your personal statement. Like it should be inherently like personal, like how you feel, why you felt that way. What, like personal statements are meant to be like, as weird as it sounds, I know we have feelings. Like people who go into medicine have feelings and like emotions, but it should be like how you feel and like why you feel so strongly about medicine. And if it happens to be that like aspects of your resume or CV are brought up, that's great. I just don't think that should be like at the forefront, unless it was an experience, like in a clinical experience that made you realize that.
Yeah, that was my question, because I feel like my passion for going to medicine has more to do with the way that I grew up and like the experiences I had in like my childhood and like early adulthood. So that's why I'm like, but do they also want to see that like, oh, but like they want to make sure that I like shadowed in college or I did clinical, like.
Okay. Yeah, my apologies. I don't think I answered that question correctly. Put that down. That is your story. That is your story. Put it down unapologetically. I think what they don't want you saying is like I did this and this and this. Like these are my 20 activities or whatever when you have an activity section for that. But if that's your story, put it down.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I think there's like a minute left, something like that. Are there any more questions? Okay. Well, how's everyone's day going?
It's good. Normally this would be when I think like around the time we would be having spring break, but there's no spring break.
Okay. Did everyone else get the breakout room notification too, or is it just me? Okay.
Thank you for talking with us. We really appreciate it. It was super helpful.
Of course, it's good meeting everyone. Good luck. I'm sure I'll see you.
Thank you. See ya.
Thank you.
Give it a second for people to come back. All right, so it looks like we have everyone back. I just wanted to say thank you guys for coming out and thanks to all of our volunteers. I guess for medical students, if you feel comfortable, maybe you could put your emails in the chat just in case people have any lingering questions that you want to ask. But other than that, that's all we have planned for you.